and gentlemen, your master of ceremonies, Anthony Vaccaro.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? It's a little bit of a reverb on that, but that's all right, we'll get through. Welcome everyone. As the voice of God said, I'm Anthony Vaccaro. I am the publisher of the Northern Miner, and I'm also managing director for Glacier Resource Innovation Group, and more importantly, I'm your host, your MC for the evening. Well, thank you. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. I'll take it. So everyone's looking wonderful. Hope everyone's doing well. I've been really excited for this evening. So how has the last year and a half been for all of you? Anyone get up to anything really interesting while they were under house arrest for the last year and a half? It's been a tough one. That's okay. This is like our reintegration into society party. I think that's the way we all need to think of this. Right? Yes. We'll all kind of work off the rust, remember what it is to laugh and to have fun with each other once again. Now, listen, things have changed a little bit since we were all put away, but we're going to do our best to get everyone back up to speed. The first thing is, the most important thing is, it looks like we came out of that bear market. I think I can say that. Gives me a bit of a shiver down the spine saying the words bear market. It's like the word Voldemort. You don't want to say it for fear of it returning, but I mean, gold did pretty okay. Gold did well last year, I think, right? I mean, it could have done a little bit better considering the world was going down the toilet, and you might have thought a bit better of a performance on gold, but that younger generation, right? That younger generation isn't investing in mining the way previous generations did. That's a problem, right? It's a problem that we're all aware of. How do we get these younger generations to care and invest in mining? Because they want to mine for Bitcoin and they want to meme for GameStop. Those are the things. Bitcoin and GameStop. Bitcoin and GameStop. How did those investments work out? Like, with that kind of investment track record, are we sure we want to get this younger generation in here? I don't know. Maybe we want to skip a couple generations and start fresh. Just a thought. And then there was the older guys down in New York City, the hedge fund managers, right? They didn't like this GameStop business one bit. They got on the horn of the SEC, right? They argued very vociferously that something needs to be done. These kids cannot be allowed to manipulate the market. That's our thing. What's the purpose of our existence if just anyone can do this? So there was that. And then there was the whole hacker security threat, right? I'm trying to give you guys all the big moments of last year the best I can. The hacker security threat, that was a big one, where they come in, they hijack your company basically, they hold it ransom, you have to pay them a few million in Bitcoin, surprise, surprise. Now this whole racket seems to me to be particularly unfair to the mining industry of all sectors. I mean, mining executives are already dealing with higher levels of stress than your average executive, right? Like there's tailings dam management, there's illegal miners, angry protesters. We even have bandito mine robbers in some cases, right? Where they ride up to the gold mine with shotguns and rob the gold at gunpoint. That happens, unfortunately, that happens. But now it's a 15-year-old kid in his parents' basement wearing a We Charity shirt that's gonna be your final undoing. It does not seem fair to me. Times have changed, but some things remain the same. We still celebrate greatness, and we have an unbelievable slate of individuals that personify greatness to welcome into the Hall of Fame this year. We have the force of nature herself. Yes, that is how she is commonly referred to, as a force of nature. Imagine that. Doesn't get any better than that. Patricia Dillon, or Pat Dillon. I think it would be wonderful if we could clone Pat Dillon. If every country that has a mining industry could have a Pat Dillon, doesn't it feel like globally this industry would operate on such a more sophisticated level? I mean, Pat has headed up or played a key leadership role in almost every association in this country that really matters. Now, she's perhaps best known for all the amazing work she's done for PDAC Mining Matters. She's guided that since 1994. Mining Matters has reached over 780,000 people over the years, educating them on the importance of mining. 780,000 people, that's a big number. Like that's an impact. That is an impact. But of course, you can't be that good at something unless it's innate and it's like truly in you. And Pat, a love of learning, as I found out, has always been part of your life. I heard from your geology professor back at U of T, Jeff Norris. And he said that you stood out from the crowd because you always had this incredible love of learning. But he went on to say, but that was not all that she loved. Along came Ted, an undergraduate and a geological engineer. They sat together in class and they held hands, which made note-taking a little bit difficult for both of them. Ponder that image. That's pretty adorable. But they figured it out. They figured out how to hold hands and to take notes. They both graduated. Pat became a geologist back in the 1970s. Back when being a female geologist was about as common as a Maple Leaf playoff victory is nowadays. It was rare stuff. It was rare stuff. You'll have to indulge me a little bit in the spirit of getting up to speed on all the things that, in case we missed it, sort of thing. There was a little, I'm going to pursue this Leaf angle just a little bit here as a suffering Leaf fan. There was a bit of good news for us Leaf fans, and it came from an unexpected source. There's a new French language law coming out of Quebec. I don't know if everyone saw that. It's going before the legislator in October. It's Bill 96. And it gets a little bit stricter in some areas. But one unexpected bit of good news is there's actually a line in there that it's going to be illegal to chant "Go Habs Go" in English in the Bell Center. So we won't have to hear that nonsense anymore. I'm happy for that. And staying with the Leafs, Steve Scott is being inducted tonight. He once played for the Leafs. Not really. No, he didn't. He didn't play for the Leafs. But he did play at Maple Leaf Gardens. And he played at the PDAC charity game, and he got to play, he's a huge Leaf fan, and he got to play with two Leaf legends, Lanny McDonald and Carl Brewer. Imagine that being on the ice with two of your, heroes growing up. I would trip over my own skates, I'd be so nervous. But not Steve. Steve rose to the occasion, scored 2 goals in the game. Scored 2 goals, and smart guy that he is, realized that it would not get any better than that, hung up his skates, I swear to God, never played another hockey game for the rest of his life. That's a smart dude. Now, he's not being inducted for his athletic prowess. He's being inducted for his intellectual contributions to our industry. He was a very deep thinker, so deep that he had to go to the bottom of the ocean for his research. I couldn't resist. Had to get a dad joke in there. He was the world-renowned expert on underwater VMS deposits, and all of it not so bad for a kid from Fort Frances, Ontario, where most children dream of growing up one day and making it big in the town of Kenora. And Kenora is, in Ontario, that's a great fishing, Lake of the Woods and all that, great fishing. David Elliott is also being inducted tonight. Dave Elliott, bit of a fisherman himself. An avid fly fisherman. He plies his trade in the wilds of BC. I am told when they get him into the Haywood offices, the company that he founded that has made such a massive contribution to this industry, when they get him into the Haywood offices, he looks a little bit flummoxed when someone says the stocks are down, because he's not sure if they're talking about mining stocks or fishing stocks, but either way, he's pissed about it. Not that he would get, rant and rave about it. He's known as being a very soft-spoken individual, which I kind of think is a nice way of saying he mumbles sometimes. But it's all appropriate. This is a man who, despite his grand achievements, has maintained unbelievable humility. He's known for his favorite expression is that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and he lives by that. I've heard from many of your associates, Dave, that say that you always take the time. You can call him anytime, anywhere, and he'll always take the call and try to help out. But Dave, you're a Hall of Fame member now. You might have to rethink that policy. That phone's going to be buzzing. It might get in the way with the angling a little bit. You might want to think on that one. Then we have William Gladstone Jewitt, or Bill. Now, this is the 2nd Hall of Fame induction for Bill. Think about that for a career. He was inducted into the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame back in 1978. And he brought those aviation skills into our industry. Right? He trained his geologists to be pilots, and they would fly themselves off into uncharted territories to look for deposits. They called it the Cominco Air Force. It was kind of the secret sauce of Cominco, helped build it into the juggernaut that it became. Although going off into new territories does come a little bit easier for some than it does for others. Turns out William could trace his lineage all the way back to William the Conqueror. It's a true fact. Who was known as William the Bastard before he took control of England from the Anglo-Saxons. Shows how one big victory can change your reputation for the rest of your life. So there's still hope for some of us in that story. Listen, neither one of those titles would apply to Bill. Bill was a Renaissance man, if ever there was one. He could recite poetry in 3 different languages. He could play the piano with great virtuosity. He was a real family man. I thank his grandkids for sending in many of the remembrances of their grampy. The one that stuck out the most that I thought was a telling detail was how he'd love to get a golf game going with his grandkids, and he would orchestrate things in such a way that the winning shot always came down to a final putt on the 18th hole. He was a true maestro indeed. And last, but certainly not least, an overdue induction for Mary Edith Tyrrell. Although she was known as Dolly back in her time, and Dolly was at the forefront of a movement to get our industry to think about communities, both within mining and outside of mining. She was the founder of the Women's Association of the Mining Industry of Canada, WAMIC. She had incredible technical expertise as well. She picked this up of her own volition by reading her husband's textbooks as he was off doing field work. But it really is her macro thinking about how mining can make society better that really distinguished her lifetime. In the past, Mary Edith had been referred to as the wife of Hall of Fame member Joseph B. Tyrrell. I think tonight it's time that we give Dolly her due when we refer to old Joseph B. as the husband of Hall of Fame member Mary Edith Tyrrell. So a hearty congratulations to all of tonight's inductees. Thank you all for being here. And Pierre, over to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Thank you again, all of you, for coming for this wonderful evening. I think under the stars. Have the clouds cleared? It is my absolute honor to be your chair, championing the recognition and celebration of the greatest minds and leaders in the Canadian mining industry. As Anthony just said, it feels quite surreal to see all of you here tonight, live and in person. I'm sure all of us feel a bit zoomed out, so it's wonderful to be here in such great company. I was just thinking to myself how this is the first time in a year and a half I've been at a podium. So it's just a really different experience. The last 18 months have tested all of us in many ways, but I'm really proud of the way our industry has navigated this pandemic. We took care of our employees, our operations, and our local communities by collectively following science-based pandemic protocols that put the health and safety of people first. We continued to deliver the global supply of materials integral to the items each of us use every day. We provided livelihoods for employees, contractors, and their families. We supported communities by lending a helping hand and sharing safety expertise. And we contributed to northern economies and enabled trade with other nations. And our work continues. And just as a little aside, our record when the pandemic broke, in the first few months of the pandemic, was noticed by the federal government, with which I work too much. And the Privy Council office, which is the most senior office, serves the Prime Minister, reached out to us and said, we'd like to set up a call with you because your industry is doing something so well, and we're wondering if we could learn some lessons from you so that we could share with other sectors of the economy because of how well we were managing the safety and health of our employees. And it's because our industry has embraced safety and health for so long that even though this was a new challenge, we weren't starting from scratch. We had the fundamentals in place and knew how to go from there. So politicians across the country recognized what we as an industry have always known. Mining is essential. plays a key role in driving our economy forward, and is recognized as a global leader in ESG. Our time is now. Our sector delivers the critical minerals and metals needed for the global transition to a low-carbon future. The opportunities in front of us are immense, and our allies around the globe want to buy from Canada because they know that what we do responsibly. Mining will be a constructive partner in the fight against climate change. Perhaps we have Elon Musk to thank for that, or at least his Twitter page, for getting the message out around the world. Speaking of billionaires, I was thrilled to see Jeff Bezos finally live out his lifelong dream, and that of all of his employees, it would seem, of going into space. But then I found out he was coming back. We have gotten to where we are today in no small part because of our leaders who had the tenacity to push forward and make this future a reality, looking underground instead of into outer space. Though there's more and more talk about space mining, but I digress. To recognize those who have come before us, in normal years we would acknowledge Hall of Fame members with us tonight. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, many could not join us. Representing these esteemed alumni, I would like to welcome Ed Thompson. Ed, thank you for being here and for holding down the fort. With these bright lights, I can't see you. Over there. Welcome, Ed. Sadly, we lost two members this year. Donald Digger Gorman passed away in April 2020, and Steve Vaughan in September. Inducted in 2009, Professor Gorman was a renowned mineralogist and superbly talented educator. Digger, as he was fondly known, taught mineralogy for over 40 years and inspired hundreds of geology students and engineering students to pursue careers in mining and mineral exploration. Steve Vaughan was inducted in 2017 and was a leading expert and advisor on natural resource law, project finance, and mineral policy matters for more than 40 years. He was also a trailblazing advocate for corporate social responsibility in the mining sector. We honor the lives of Digger Gordon and Steve Vaughan and are grateful for their incredible contributions to our industry. Now, we are here tonight to celebrate our next group of individuals who make Canada's mining industry a global leader. Last fall, we announced 5 new members to our Hall of Fame: Patricia Dillon, David Elliott, William Gladstone Jewitt, Stephen D. Scott, and Mary Edith Tyrrell. These 5 inductees reflect the very best of mining excellence, determination, diversity of thought, and contribution to community. As exceptional leaders and champions, each of the inductees were instrumental in growing our sector, and they have endowed us with a positive legacy that continues to thrive today. You'll hear more about their lives and their careers shortly. At the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame, we strive to capture stories that will inspire future generations in mining. To help sustain our future, we are incredibly grateful to our sponsors, and as I said earlier, especially this year during the challenging times we've been through. So we'd like to thank our sponsors with the following video.
The Canadian Mining Hall of Fame would like to thank and acknowledge our sustaining sponsors. It is through their generous support we maintain our enduring presence within the Canadian mining industry. Thank you to our legacy sponsor, Hecla Mining Company. Hecla is a precious metals mining company with operations in Canada and the United States. Currently celebrating 130 years, Hecla is the largest silver producer in the U.S. and has been delivering long-term value for shareholders and building a net positive legacy for all.
We're the oldest precious metals mining company on the New York Stock Exchange. We're responsible for 1/3 of the silver produced in the United States, and we hold the country's largest silver reserve and resource. We're a North American business operating in the safest, most secure jurisdictions in the world. We're Hecla Mining Company.
We would like to thank our visionary sponsors. Agnico Eagle is a senior Canadian gold miner that has been producing precious metals since 1957. Recognized globally for its leading environmental, social, and governance practices, Agnico is a partner of choice within the mining industry. Thank you to Agnico Eagle for hosting tonight's reception.
How do we make mining work? By reducing our impact on the land. By sharing opportunity as a community partner. By building trust because you can't be successful without it. That's how we make mining work.
And Hatch. Hatch partners with their clients to tackle their toughest challenges in the metals, energy, and infrastructure sectors. They are celebrating 65 years of exceptional customer service this year. Thank you to Hatch for tonight's dinner wine.
So once again, thank you for joining us for this special evening, and let's get down to business. Anthony.
All right. Thank you, Pierre. This is the main part of the evening, the main course that everyone has come for. Hope everyone enjoyed their main course. The cod was particularly delicious. So it's time to induct the 5 unique individuals into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame in what is undeniably a most unusual year. Our first inductee this evening is Pat Dillon. Please enjoy this tribute video that's going to let us learn more about Pat's amazing career.
Patricia Dillon has followed 2 passions in life, the mining industry and education. Her tireless dedication to both has made a huge impact on the industry and its current and future leaders.
Pat has a different level of passion for the industry and has made it, who she is and has been a champion of it ever since.
She's been involved in so many projects, a major role or as a leader. The industry owes a debt of gratitude for her tremendous commitment as an advocate and as an ambassador. She's a true champion.
Patricia, or Pat, was born and raised and educated in Toronto. Her career in the mining industry followed her graduation from the University of Toronto with a Bachelor of Science in Geology in 1974.
I knew I was always going to take the sciences, and so I would sign up for biology, physics, chemistry, and mathematics, but you needed another course back in the day. So I was flipping through the university calendar. At that time, it was a printed document, and I saw geology, and I thought, well, that'll be a nice addition to the other sciences.
When her highest mark was in that course, she decided it was a sign to pursue geology.
Well, my first summer job was with SO Minerals, and I was hired as their field assistant to work here in Ontario exploring for copper deposits, actually right in cottage country. So it was a pretty nice first summer job.
Following graduation, she and her fiancé Ted both applied to Teck for summer jobs.
We ended up getting hired as a field team to go and work in Newfoundland around the Newfoundland zinc mines property.
That was the beginning of a lifelong partnership and marriage that saw both Pat and Ted deeply committed to each other and the industry.
I knew with both of us in the same profession, we had to diversify our skill set, and so I had decided to go back to university to get a Bachelor of Education.
While teaching science at Lorne Park Secondary School, Pat was approached by Teck with an offer she said she couldn't refuse. That began what became a 32-year career with Teck.
Pat was a trusted, strategic, and genuine leader within Teck's management team that helped build a culture of meaningful employee engagement. Pat empowered those around her to meet shared goals and did so with boundless energy. Her legacy is still felt throughout the organization today.
Pat says Teck encouraged employees to join industry organizations and believed participation was about more than paying fees. Pat took that to heart and set about fostering change through leadership by holding key executive positions on many industry associations and educational institutions. A passion for education led Pat to help create Mining Matters, a charitable organization dedicated to producing educational resources promoting knowledge and understanding of the minerals industry. Her enduring legacy, Pat has held the position of President and CEO of Mining Matters for over 25 years. Mining Matters started in 1994, celebrating its 25th anniversary in 2019. In 2002, it created its first Indigenous programming.
That was all started by Patricia back in 2002. We had our first program in Cambridge Bay, bringing together grade 7 youth. Now we're delivering upwards of 40 programs for Indigenous communities and in partnership with communities across Canada. I'm grateful for her incredible leadership. She's a tremendous motivator and an inspiration, and has a vision and really leads to ensure the team's success.
Pat also obtained a secondment from Tech to work with the Lassonde Mineral Engineering Program.
Pat's commitment and enthusiasm in promoting the engineering profession and helping students get the most out of their university days through finding them summer jobs and employment made Pat the go-to person in the department. Our applications to the program soared through her tenure, and that's a direct reflection of her work.
Pat also played major roles in organizations like PDAC, CIM, and the Mining Industry Human Resources Council.
I feel quite privileged to have had the opportunity to have Pat as a chair, because I learned a tremendous amount from her. But I also feel like the chairs that have come after her, that have seen Pat in that role, have also benefited from being able to see her approach and her inclusivity.
I have attended most PDAC meetings since I was president in 1977 to 1979, and have personally observed Pat's tremendous efforts over the years, including 8 years on the executive committee and 2 as president. Her contributions to the various committees she chaired or participated in have been invaluable.
Pat's excellent organizational and communication skills made her a force for change in the mining industry. As an early advocate of corporate social responsibility, she was deeply involved in the development of the Mining Association of Canada's Towards Sustainable Mining initiative. After a long and illustrious career, Pat has continued to contribute to the industry and took a position at the Schulich School of Business Global Mining Management Program.
That was very exciting because we felt this was a program that was really helping to develop the future mining leaders.
It would not be surprising to know that most people who work in the mining industry today, somewhere on their career path, have been exposed to something that Pat Dillon has contributed to.
Few individuals have so deeply and successfully helped build, nurture, and spread the goodwill of Canada's mining industry as Pat Dillon. We are incredibly proud to call her a member of the Tech family.
When I first started attending Hall of Fame board meetings as Gordon Peeling's sidekick and note-taker, I watched people largely unknown to me get inducted. As the years in my time in the sector went by, I reached a point where I knew some of the inductees and had maybe met them. Later, I got to know some of them fairly well, like Jim Carter and Jim O'Rourke, who had served on the boards of the associations that I had led. Today, however, is really special for me, because today we are inducting a very good friend. Pat Dillon took me under her wing years ago, gave me advice, introduced me to countless people, and worked me hard when she chaired the committees that I ran. Over the years, people would often say, Pat's headed to the Hall of Fame, because Pat was everywhere you turned, the most constant, tireless promoter of the mining sector you could ever meet. To get into the hall, Pat only had to get old enough which is hard for someone like Pat Dillon, who can do everything but age. She built Mining Matters from the ground up, as we heard, and has led virtually every association in the country. Pat wears mining on much more than her sleeve, or so Ted tells me, because I don't know her that well. Pat, is a true honor, privilege, and pleasure to welcome you into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. Please join me in congratulating Pat Dillon.
Wow. For those of you who don't know, that's the first time I saw that video. So I'm so glad I'm not crying so much that mascara is running down my face to ruin that photograph. Thank you, Anthony, for those amazing introductory remarks. And thank you for Pierre for presenting me with this very, very stunning sculpture. I'm happy, grateful, honored, thankful, and overwhelmed. It is an overwhelming honor to be inducted into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame and to be joining the builders of tech. Dr. Keevil, Dr. Keevil Sr., Bob Hallbauer, David Thompson, and Ed Thompson, already recognized for their incredible contributions to the Canadian mining industry. I'm very happy to be able to congratulate in person the other inductees this evening. Steve Scott, not just Jeff Norris. Actually, I guess Ted and I had a bit of a reputation. Steve Scott was one of my professors at U of T and was well respected as an excellent teacher and researcher. He would frequently tell others when we were gathered together at industry events how he remembered us holding hands at the back of the room during his phase diagram lectures. For those of you who have sat through phase diagram lectures, this was not a difficult task for us. Over many years, Mining Matters was the grateful recipient of donations from the Women's Association of the Mining Industry of Canada, the organization launched by Mary Edith Tyrrell, also being inducted this evening. William Gladstone Jewitt, as you've already heard, he and I share a common background through our employers, Tech and Kaminko. And David Elliott, as a financier of mineral exploration projects, supported the backbone of the industry that provided me with an amazing career. I'd like to thank the board and the sponsors of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame for their perseverance in continuing to celebrate excellence in our industry through the challenges of COVID, and to express gratitude to Becky Bays and Deb Reckles and Carla Doig for their creativity and obvious success in delivering this wonderful evening here at the Agacon Museum. I don't know how they stopped the rain, but thank you, thank you. I'm very happy to be sharing this evening with many dear friends. In particular, Ed Thompson and Sally Lawton, thank you for all of your efforts on my nomination and the incredible support you have provided for Mining Matters over many, many years. Ed was on the Mining Matters board, as well as providing financial support. To Wayne Henschel, thank you so much for all of your help with our technology choices and also helping us to recognize the value of developing resources for sight-impaired students. Thank you so much. Laura, thank you for your exceptional leadership and the great work at Mining Matters, but most importantly, for sharing my passion, which you clearly talked about in the video. To Maureen and Torben Jensen here, and Deb McComb, who I think is back there, Thank you for your decades of friendship and your volunteer efforts and the loan of your children over many years assembling Mining Matters kits. And there was a picture, and all of our kids were there. And there are many others in the room, not a room, in this venue this evening I consider dear friends, too numerous to name. I'd like to thank the PDAC board for supporting my nomination, and I'd like to thank the Board of Mining Matters for supporting my leadership over, as you heard, many, many years. At this time, though, most importantly, I'd like to thank my many colleagues, mentors, managers, and the senior leadership team at Tech. Over 37 years, 32 as a full-time employee, I received guidance and support and was given incredible opportunities for development and learning. Dr. Keevil Sr., Don Lindsay, Doug Horswell, David Parker, Gary Jones, Barry Simmons, Matthew Blecka, and John May were the men who shaped my career and supported my involvement with many industry associations and their various programs and projects focused on improving performance in the industry. Pierre Lasson's transformative gift to the University of Toronto Faculty of Engineering that established the Lasson Mineral Engineering Program and Lasson Institute provided me with an unforgettable mid-career experience to work closely with students, giving me insight into the aspirations, challenges, and frustrations of the industry's future leaders. And I thank him profoundly for that opportunity. And finally, I'm so happy and thankful for the love and support of my family. My father drove me to my first PDAC convention at the Royal York in 1972, shaking his head, questioning whether it was wise to drive his 20-year-old daughter to a convention of mining types. Can you imagine? Really? Do you know what it was like in 1972? Most of you are old enough to remember. My mom volunteered over several summers to put rock and mineral samples into plastic bags for assembly into Mining Matters kits in the Tech offices. She loved the thrill of traveling downtown and being part of something so important to me. Our daughters, Amanda and Sarah, accepted the fact that being part of the summer student assembly teams for Mining Matters kits was not negotiable. Fortunately, the weekly $25 payment, daily muffins and ice cream, and Friday lunch at Ed's warehouse with the youthful group made the chore more fun. To my husband, Ted, there will never be enough words of thanks, love, and gratitude. You make me happy above all, and I wouldn't be standing here without you. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if there's anyone in this audience that has not yet had the privilege of meeting Pat. I don't know if there's anyone left in the mining industry that hasn't met Pat. She's that individual that gets out there and meets everyone. But if you have not met Pat, you got a little taste of why she is so revered, respected, and loved in this industry. Thank you, Pat, and congratulations. Okay, we're going to hear from our champion sponsor. We have a video, so we'll ask for your attention, and let's watch that.
Thank you to our champion sponsors. EY is building a better working world by accelerating the sector's readiness for the energy transition through innovation-led solutions and cutting-edge services driven by its Mining and Metals Center of Excellence. Magris Performance Materials, a leading North American-based niobium and talc materials company. Tech, a leading Canadian mining company, responsibly producing materials essential to our modern world, with operations and projects across Canada, the United States, Chile, and Peru. Yamana Gold, a Canadian-based precious metals producer, mining profitably and responsibly across operations throughout the Americas.
All right. Thank you to all of our champion sponsors. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, now we're going to hear a little bit about that former Leaf. I can't believe I had you guys all on that one. Oh, my God. That felt really good. Okay, Steve Scott. Here is our video about Steve Scott. Let's learn in greater detail about his amazing career.
Steve Scott is known as one of Canada's most distinguished geoscientists, recognized worldwide for his contribution to academia and the mining industry. He's been called one of Canada's most prolific and influential geoscience researchers in the past 50 years.
I don't believe there's been a Canadian or international scientist who's had a bigger impact on the education and research of marine geology. His work, both as a primary researcher and leader in advancing the entire community, has shaped current thinking on how hydrothermal systems and volcanogenic massive sulfide deposits develop.
Steve Scott was born in Fort Frances, Ontario in 1941, the first child born at the then new Fort Frances Hospital.
The day he was born was the day that they opened the Fort Frances Hospital. They were cutting the ribbons at the front door, and his mom was going in the back door to have a baby.
Steve started studying chemistry, but after a summer job in geology, realized he could combine the two. His career as a geochemist started with a bachelor's and master's degree from the University of Western Ontario. In 1968, Steve went on to obtain his PhD in geochemistry and mineralogy at Pennsylvania State University. That led to a long and illustrious career as a researcher, teacher, lecturer, and explorer. In 1969, following his time as a research associate at Penn State, Steve returned to Canada to take a position as an assistant professor in the geology department at the University of Toronto. He held various positions at U of T until his retirement in 2006. Steve was also a visiting professor at universities in France, Australia, Japan, and Hawaii in the United States.
During this time, Steve and his students added to our understanding of sulfide phase equilibria. The most significant work was the development of the sphalerite geobarometer, which provided a metallurgical tool for estimating pressure formation of ore deposits and the formation of iron meteorites.
In 1982, Steve was asked to participate in an expedition that took him aboard an Alvin submersible, investigating black smokers on the ocean floor. That trip changed the course of his life.
He came back excited as could be because he saw it as a natural laboratory to see how all the things that he had been working with and trying to understand, he could actually see them happening.
Steve Scott was the first Canadian economic geologist to witness the formation of massive sulfide deposits on the seafloor. He parlayed this interest into a career as one of the world's top marine scientists.
As early as 1984, he was the first to recognize that seafloor deposits could be an economic resource, which led to his interest on how they could be recovered and limiting environmental issues. And within about 30 years after that initial discovery, an innovative industry now exists around the concept of mining seafloor polymetallic deposits. Steve himself was a co-discoverer of several deep seafloor mineral precipitating hydrothermal sites, including the Swara 1 deposit in the Eastern Mans Basin offshore Papua New Guinea.
Steve is kind of like the great-grandfather of a whole development of research out there now that has dozens and dozens of really top-notch people doing it and are following in his footsteps.
One of Steve Scott's greatest legacies will be the impact he has had on his collaborators and students. He and Joan affectionately referred to them as the Scott Diaspora and considered them extended family who are spread around the globe.
Everybody was important to him. He would have them as grad students, and then they would become colleagues, and they would be wherever, all over the world.
But Steve managed to make them all outstanding because he taught them well. He mentored them well.
Many of the people Steve helped guide are today making significant contributions to academia and the mining industry. Like most geologists, Steve believed the more rocks you saw, the better geologist you became. Steve's research led him to create many noted publications, which were still being cited 50 years after publication. As a highly respected professor, he also supervised numerous theses. Steve's outstanding contributions led to being recognized by academia and industry, receiving many awards, including a doctorate from Université de Bretagne Occidentale in France, and becoming a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. Steve was known as a great communicator who had the ability to transfer his energy and enthusiasm to his students, industry, and the public. His expertise was sought after well into his retirement, evident by the 498 invited lectures he presented in over 20 countries. Steve and Joan traveled extensively during their long marriage and together organized yearly lectures in China over a 10-year period.
I sometimes like to refer to Steve as the Kermit of the Frog of geology. He was incredibly enthusiastic, and particularly when we got into the marine world, there was just no holding Steve back. He was so enthusiastic about it, and that kind of explains Steve for his whole career.
He loved life, and he was very determined. He was very inquisitive, very curious, and very determined to do a good job. And he was enthusiastic about his job. He was enthusiastic about geology, enthusiastic about people knowing it, and about science, and people knowing about science.
He'd make that effort, and he'd make it for his students and his colleagues, his friends everywhere. He was a great champion of other people.
Don't know about you, but that made me feel a little inadequate. Steve Scott was clearly one of Canada's most prolific and influential geoscientists of modern times. Accepting the award on his behalf are his children, Don and Sue, if you want to make your way up to the stage. Thank you.
On behalf of Steve Scott, Dad, and the family here tonight, we want to thank you very much for this marvelous honor which the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame have bestowed upon Dad tonight. He would have been very humbled and so appreciative of this recognition, Kathy, stop, by his peers of his career and the life he enjoyed so much. Good one. Many of you knew Dad and his professional persona. We, the family, would like to share with you some insights on his other side, keeping in mind that the predominant factor in his life was geology, always geology, including the geology of the wine that he so enjoyed. When my brother and I were younger, much younger than we are today, we would head to Northern Ontario for the summer. As many of the geologists here today know, this does not mean Muskoka. Each summer, we would pile into the U of T geology cargo van, drive to Gratton, then head north up a dirt road for about an hour to a float plane that would then fly us into Savant Lake. We would spend about 2 months in what seemed like the middle of nowhere, but as Dad always said, you need to go to where the rocks are. This would become a constant in our life, throughout our lives, along with geology lessons, because any drive we took anywhere, Dad would always point to all of the outcrops every single step of the way. This took a different turn when Dad's focus shifted to the ocean floor. I remember one of his first trips back from the Juan de Fuca Ridge in the early 80s. He was all excited to show us some of the very first footage of pillow lava from the ocean floor. So here I am at midnight, sitting on the family room floor, getting seasick, watching black blobs come in and out of focus. That was Dad. He was always so excited to share his geological enthusiasm. I could go on for hours. People don't want that. But now my brother would like to share a few thoughts of his own. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Sorry. I do remember that night well. I think Sue was the only one who got seasick, though. So just carrying on this idea of stories, my story isn't so much about my father. It's more about geology itself and that community. And I'm going to try to be quick here, but you're going to have to bear with me a little bit because I think this is actually the only place I can tell the story and actually have it fully appreciated. So I can say without any hyperbole, that geology saved my life. Sue and I pretty much grew up in the old geology building at U of T. You know, we'd be down there, you know, painting little white dots on rocks and going to all the classes my dad was teaching. Now, I realize that everyone here probably thinks that'd be pretty exciting, but for a kid it was actually kind of boring. Except this one class, and it was where he would show this movie about earthquakes, and it was called San Francisco, the City That Waits to Die. It was, yeah, I'm sure you do, because the timing, that movie came out in 1971, Pat. Yeah, and it was all very dramatic in only the way it could in the 1970s, and I think I saw that movie about a dozen times growing up. So anyway, fast forward, and as fate would have it, I'm moving to San Francisco, the city that waits to die. And my girlfriend had gone ahead and found an apartment right on the Marina Green, the spectacular view of the Golden Gate Bridge. And she got, it's an understatement to say, she got a little upset with me when I was quite adamant that we wouldn't live there because it was built on landfill, and we needed to live on bedrock. In fact, I think she called me a little crazy. So we ended up moving into this crappy little apartment up the hill on Fillmore on bedrock. A month later, I was working in that apartment when the 6.9 magnitude Loma Prieta earthquake hit. And that apartment was fine. Few cracks in the plaster, but fine. That apartment on a Marina Green, not so fine. It collapsed. So thank you to the class for teaching me about soil liquefaction and for knowing how to read a geology map of San Francisco. So it's, as we've heard today, I think it was one of these very same classes that one of tonight's inductees, Pat, was also introduced to the wonders of geology. My father, he would have been thrilled to have been inducted this year with two women. And the fact that one is from the U of T and a former student is just an added bonus. As for his induction, many of Steve's colleagues and friends were responsible for his nomination. And from these many, we'd like to specifically thank Jim Franklin for spearheading the nomination and working closely with the Department of Earth Sciences at U of T, somewhere here, and the PDAC as well. Now, nobody, as you know, works in isolation, and that can be especially said of my father. And this award, it reflects not only on his efforts, but also this greater community of colleagues and friends that make up the Canadian mining industry and academia. Thus, there are a lot of people to thank. If he were here tonight, the first person he would be thanking would be my mother, his wife, his bedrock. He would have acknowledged that he could not have pursued his dreams without her. He would also be thanking all of his colleagues here and around the world. Everyone from the undergrads to the postdocs, those who challenged him, questioned him, gave him that little bit of a puzzle that he needed to either start or finish a project, those that organized him, those that pushed him, or just enjoyed a cold beer after a hard day's work. You all know who you are and the parts you played in his career to make it as special and diversified as it was. And finally, a thank you again to the board and the sponsors of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame for putting on such a marvelous party under such difficult circumstances. My dad loved a good party, and this was always one of his favorites. Thank you.
Thank you, Don and Sue. Very, very, very well done. Jim Franklin, I actually spoke to Jim Franklin leading up to this because he wanted to talk a little bit more about your father. And what came through really clear in my conversation with Jim, there's these rare individuals in life that have these unbelievable intellectual capacities, as we've all seen with Steve. But when you have that capacity married with an ability to teach and to inspire a whole generation of people that are now influencing our students, our industry, that we're students, it's very uniquely special. He's a very special man. So thank you for that. We're now going to take a moment to thank our gold sponsor.
The Canadian Mining Hall of Fame would like to thank this year's gold sponsors: Barrick Gold, Franco-Nevada, and Haywood.
As the video display shows, our next video honors the life of Mary Edith Tyrrell. Thank you.
Edith Tyrrell founded an organization that had a significant impact on the mining industry and affected the lives of many of its leaders. What started as a simple idea to connect women associated with mining resulted in a legacy that lived long beyond her years. The Women's Association of the Mining Industry of Canada celebrates its 100th anniversary in 2021, an anniversary that marks the significant contribution both Edith and the organization have made to the mining industry.
The reason that they started the organization was so that women could meet other women and make friends, lasting friendships.
When Edith Tyrrell brought 10 women together in 1921, it was the beginning of a dynamic organization that would grow to 400 members, an organization that would affect the lives of hundreds of people through its charitable works and bursaries and scholarships.
The word spread. You really should belong to this organization because we're a good group of people and we need your help. We need your gifts of whatever you can do. And the organization just grew and grew.
It all started with Mary Edith Tyrrell, born in St. John, New Brunswick in 1870, daughter of a Baptist minister. Weighing only 3 pounds at birth, she was nicknamed Dolly. It was after returning to Canada following high school in England that Edith's life changed. Their home became a gathering place for politicians and scholars. It's there her adventure started when she met her future husband, Joseph Burr Tyrrell, a renowned mapmaker with the Geological Survey of Canada.
He had already been on some great expeditions in northern Canada and would continue to do that, and discovered dinosaurs and coal in Alberta. He too was inducted into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame in 1997.
She understood the joys and hardships of being married to someone in the field, the long absences, and sometimes travel to remote places with her husband. Edith felt there was a need to connect to other wives going through the same experiences. As the years passed, the women began making their first contributions to the industry.
Towards the end of the 1930s, each member was asked to contribute $2 to a scholarship fund that they established for a student in the geology or mining sciences.
Since those beginnings, the organization has distributed over $1.8 million to good causes, establishing a foundation in 1964.
There are many men who were able to get our scholarships and bursaries who ended up in the industry, and some of them have done extremely well. I mean, they are huge in the industry.
I have been touched many times by the legacy of the founder of WAMIC. In the 70s, I was a mining student and was awarded an Edith Tyrrell scholarship from WAMIC. That $2,000 was then a princely sum for a student. In the 80s and 90s, I saw WAMIC members tirelessly support PDAC and CIM conventions, when those organizations were so much more dependent on volunteers than today. I am grateful to both Edith Tyrrell and the WAMIC organization she created.
It was Edith's foresight and hard work through the founding of WAMIC that has awarded funds to the many financially struggling students like myself who are self-financing their education. I attribute the receipt of those early WAMIC awards, my first ever academic acknowledgements, as playing a substantive role in assisting me through those very tentative early years. For that, credit must go to Edith Tyrrell.
Edith and the women of WAMIC have worked tirelessly for decades, contributing their time, energy, and enthusiasm to volunteer work and fundraising events.
We weren't only entertaining and having fundraisers and fashion shows and teas. Every 2 years we'd have the big fairs.
Mary Edith Tyrrell passed away in 1945, but her tenacity and commitment to mining women lives on through the accomplishments of the organization.
Well, her daughter described her as two people. There was Mary Edith, who was dignified and rather stern. And then there was Dolly, as she'd been called when she was born. She seems to have been a bit of a live wire, feisty, I think a sense of humor, and willing to go anywhere with her husband.
Although the organization is winding down after 100 years, its ability to give lives on through ongoing scholarships, now administered by other organizations.
The wonderful thing is, we are still going to continue to be able to give our scholarships because that money has been all invested.
The impact of Edith's legacy is still felt in organizations WAMEC supported, like CIM, PDAC, and the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. The one thing that can't be measured is the deep and long-lasting friendships that were developed in WAMEC's 100-year history. Hundreds of women connected by one idea, conceived by Mary Edith Tyrrell in 1921.
So over 100 years ago, Mary Edith Tyrrell encouraged mining to look beyond the traditional audience and build a safe space for women. WAMEC has been instrumental in the operations and success of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. And it brings great joy to recognize Edith, albeit later than perhaps we should have, for leading the charge. I note that this is the first time we are inducting 2 women in one night. Let this be a sign of things to come. I was also told earlier that we are also inducting the first living woman in the history of the Hall of Fame. Pat was worried she wouldn't make it, that there was a curse. But you've got your award now, so you're good. Please join me in welcoming Peter Dalton, who will be accepting the award on Edith's behalf.
I would like to thank the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame for this wonderful honor for my great-grandmother, yes, great-grandmother, Mary Edith Tyrrell. Last September, I had a wonderful surprise when I had a call from the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame and heard the words, "Are you the Peter Dalton who is the great-grandson of Mary Edith Tyrrell?" Not a call I'm used to getting. As you can imagine, so often the limelight is and has been on her husband and my great-grandfather, J.B. Tyrrell. I'm honored to be here today as we celebrate Edith and the remarkable woman that she was. Past generations have told me of her strength of character and her ambition for both Joe and herself, despite the challenges of travel, months of separation, and financial difficulties, which the video addressed. She was deeply committed to Joe's career and supporting the quiet lifestyle of a miner, explorer, and surveyor in every way that she could. But today is especially rewarding to honor Edith for her specific contributions. As you saw in the video, when she and other women founded the Women's Association of the Mining Industry of Canada, I want to get that right, the impact and accomplishments she made as a woman in a predominantly male field 100 years ago highlights to me what a strong, perseverant, and dedicated woman she was. Edith told the story of her life's journey in an autobiography called I Was There. The book is full of special stories about her life of adventures from Ottawa to the Klondike and to the UK. One of the stories that she writes about in that book is also one that I heard most about from family gatherings recalling Edith's life, was when her and Joe lived in the Yukon during the Klondike Gold Rush with their daughter, my grandmother, who was the first white girl to be brought over the Chilkoot Pass. One night as she and Joe were home, a local miner burst into the cabin, angry and banging on a table. Apparently he was outraged that earlier in the day he had seen Edith pass by on the street with a child. He complained that it had been years since he had seen a young child over in the Yukon. Edith asked if he would like to see the child and brought the miner to visit the girl, my grandmother. He held her briefly and then laid her back down in her bed. The next morning, as Edith went to get young Mary out of her bed, she pulled back the covers and found one of the largest gold crystalline nuggets ever found in the Yukon. That same gold nugget was later donated to the ROM in Toronto and is now on display for all to view. I'm very proud of the legacy of Mary Edith left Canadians through the Women's Association of the Mining Industry of Canada, encouraging more young women, as well as supporting the work of the mining community as a whole. To our family, she was an intrepid and admired traveler, explorer, author, and much loved wife, mother, and grandmother, and she will live on as a part of Canadian history. Thank you very much for this wonderful honor.
Wow, that was a story. Peter, just so we get clarification, the gold nugget was not left in place of the baby, right? With the baby. Okay, just want to make sure. And thank you. You saw Neen Allman on that video. I mean, this is an induction that needed to happen. It wouldn't have happened without the incredible work that Neen Allman did to put the package together. So well done, Neen. Okay, we're going to see something from our silver sponsor now. Thank you again to all of our sponsors. Let's give our attention to silver.
Thank you to our silver sponsors: BMO Capital Markets, Panda Productions Incorporated, and Syncrude.
Okay, and now we're going to move on to the, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Look at where we are. We're not here without our sponsors. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's the Cominco Air Force time. What a story. Bill Jewitt, William Gladstone Jewitt. This is going to be a good one. Sit back and enjoy.
William Gladstone Jewitt was one of the true pioneers of the Canadian mining industry during his distinguished career as a mining engineer and pilot. William, more commonly known as Bill, was born in Marton, Yorkshire, in England. At age 6, Bill's parents moved the family to Calgary. At 13, he was named Alberta's first King Scout, a sign of his future service to the King, when, at 18, he enlisted with the Princess Patricia Light Infantry.
He was a machine gunner in France during the First War for a couple of years. And then he transferred to England to the Royal Flying Corps and became an instructor in the RFC. At the end of the war, he then became a test pilot for the Royal Air Force.
A mid-air collision ended Bill's time in England.
So the other plane fluttered down and landed safely on the field. Dad pulled out of a dive just in time to fly right through the main hangar doors. And the big Marlin engine in front of that plane he was flying took out 7 other aircraft as well as his own. That's when he smashed his front teeth in both knees. And he survived.
Recovering after 6 months in hospital, Bill went back to Canada to obtain a degree from the University of Alberta in mining engineering in 1923. He received several awards for his academic excellence, but not without some fun at school.
One day in the middle of a very boring class, Bill Jewitt disappeared from the classroom, and about halfway through the class, the side door opened, and here comes Bill Jewitt wheeling in a piano, pushing in a piano, and he and a couple of buddies started singing a World War I song. So he definitely had a sense of humor, but he was also very strict with himself in terms of his habits. His work ethic was extremely disciplined.
Following graduation, Bill worked at the university teaching a course in assaying for rhyolite oil as one of the first people researching ways of recovering petroleum from the Alberta oil sands. He then went to work at the Coleman Collieries and a gypsum mine in Nova Scotia before getting a job with Cominco.
He was one of the giants in Canadian mining in the mid-1900s and a legend at Cominco as he led the modernizing of the Sullivan Mine and the expansion into Pine Point in the north and Magmont in Missouri.
Bill's first job with Cominco was working at the assay office and smelter in Trail, BC. That changed when they discovered he was a pilot.
And so he ended up being the chief pilot for Cominco, Tech Cominco's Air Force, had 12 airplanes. And they used him on exploration up north.
And one of the most interesting things about Bill was that he also taught the geologists how to fly planes as part of their exploration training so that they can get out to some of their field sites.
Exploring the uncharted north as a bush pilot could be a perilous job.
He ran out of fuel on one occasion and had to land on a pond right above rapids that ran into another lake. And so after he got refueled, his mechanic stayed on the ground and they tied the plane to the ground. So he revved up the engine to full bore, then they cut the rope and he went down the rapids and managed to take off that way.
For his work mapping the uncharted north, William Gladstone Jewitt was inducted into the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame in 1978. In 1930, he set a record for the most northerly flight in Canada, landing on the shores of Victoria Island in the high Arctic, a record which stood for many years.
He will be the first and only person that has membership in both the Canadian Aviation, I'm going to cry, and the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. I'm very proud.
During his time at Cominco, which eventually became Tech Resources Limited, Bill contributed to the success of many projects. Bill also volunteered with the BC Yukon Chamber of Mines. Bill retired from Cominco as Vice President of Mines when he was 65, but continued working until he was 80 with Pine Point Mines, Coast Copper, and Western Mines.
He really enjoyed retirement in Victoria, and every week he would drive up to Buttle Lake to visit the mine that he was chairman of when he was in full retirement. So that's the kind of guy he was.
His work had a significant and lasting impact on Canada's mining community. I believe his accomplishments will inspire future generations of mining professionals. His pioneering spirit and story will be, I hope, a lasting example to others for years to come.
So clearly Bill Jewitt was a pioneer. He combined eyes in the skies, aerial prospecting with boots on the ground engineering expertise. Through his expeditions, he made lasting contributions to mapping and mineral exploration in Canada's north, notably in the Northwest Territories. He truly ventured where no person had gone before. No doubt, if Bill were alive today, he'd have beat Bezos into outer space. Bill's family was unfortunately not able to attend this evening. John Jewitt has recorded a message to accept the award on Bill's behalf.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I accept this prestigious award of membership in the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame on behalf of my dad, William Gladstone Jewitt. I know that he would treasure this prize alongside his membership in the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame. Bill was a strong leader. He led both of his sons into the mining game, my brother Bill as a chemical engineer and metallurgist, and myself as a mining engineer and geologist. It pleases me to know that Bill will join his former friends and colleagues in Tech Cominco, William Archibald, who hired him as a flight instructor and exploration manager. He will also join Selwyn G. Blaylock, who acquired the Sullivan Mine and led Tech Cominco to growth in the early days. And he will join Ralph W. Diamond, who developed the flotation process. Bill will also join his good friend and associate, Dr. Neil Campbell, who contributed greatly to the growth of Cameco through expansion of the Con Mine in Yellowknife and the Pine Point lead zinc in the Northwest Territories. Therefore, it is with great pride and a sense of humility that I accept this prize and award on behalf of William Gladstone Jewitt. Thank you so much.
All right. Dave, just because you're such a soft-spoken sort doesn't mean that we've forgotten about you. We've saved you for the end. I got to meet Dave a little bit when he came on to one of our symposiums. People were amazed that I got you to come on that symposium, Dave. It was like luring the spirit bear out of the forest. It was, Dave is speaking at your symposium? That's amazing. The feedback we got was incredible. So that was my first encounter with Dave, a true first-class gentleman. So let's watch a video about his career.
The mining industry wouldn't exist without people like David Elliott, who are willing to put money and reputation on the line to fund early-stage exploration projects.
I mean, it's very, very high risk, so you've got to be prepared to take those risks, and it's not for the faint at heart, for sure.
You know, it really takes somebody with, frankly, a lot of courage and a lot of patience to fund junior exploration companies.
David is not fazed by the volatile equity markets and the cyclical nature of the commodity market. Instead, he focuses on the project, management, and good science. David is an extremely patient investor. He does not expect overnight success and supports companies through thick and thin with great poise and calmness, even in the most tumultuous of markets.
Like many people in the industry, David Elliott's career choice came about by chance. David was born in Kingston, Ontario, but his parents eventually settled in Saint-Lambert, Quebec. While caddying at a golf course during high school, he heard people talking about their work in the stock market. When he saw an ad in the newspaper for a job at the Montreal Stock Exchange, he applied.
And I didn't really know much about the market at the time, but working at the stock exchange, you gain a little bit of knowledge of, what's being transacted and, what the business is.
In 1969, David took a position with a stock brokerage firm who transferred him to Vancouver. While there, he worked summers for a prospector in the Yukon. His first exposure to a company that funded mining exploration projects was his next job at West Coast Securities. It was also his first time investing his own money in projects like Afton Mines.
Of course, I didn't have a lot of money, but I bought some shares, and then I watched the share price go down. Anyway, they made a very significant discovery and drilled it off. It was later sold to Teck Resources, and Teck put it into production. And I thought, well, gee, this business is pretty easy. He said, you just have to find some exploration projects and go drill them and you'll find a mine. Well, it didn't take me long to lose that money that I made on Afton on drilling some other exploration projects.
That experience created a philosophy that led to numerous successes over David's 50-year career.
What I decided to do was to back really good science and partner with geoscientists that had a track record of discovery, that were passionate about the search for minerals.
He focuses on the people, I think, versus the transaction. Transactions sort of come and go, but people are the management teams and good quality. Science is really what drives the industry, I think, and David recognizes that. I think that's very unique.
In 1986, David and his partners bought Haywood Securities, which has grown from 15 to over 300 employees, managing over $16 billion in assets. David earned his reputation as one of Canada's preeminent resource financiers by funding more than 400 exploration and development companies.
David has been very instrumental in Haywood's success in its 4-decade-long focus on supporting Canada's mining and exploration industry, deservedly earning him a reputation as one of the industry's most dependable sources of capital for junior mining exploration companies.
It's not just David's industry expertise, but also his character and willingness to mentor that contributes to his success.
And when you have someone like David who's there to support you through that and help you make good choices, I think it's invaluable. You know, it really makes a huge difference to the success of a company. And it gets you through those downturns, you know, when the money does get difficult. You know, he gives you the support that you need to keep things together and keep moving forward.
And when you have the downs, that's when people need they need the most help. Sometimes when you are in the down cycle, and that's when you need to, as they say, cowboy up and help.
David has a long list of successes under his belt. Companies he took a chance on because he trusted the people and the science behind them. Companies like Alamos Gold, who acquired the Mulattoes project for $10 million with backing from Haywood.
From 2001 to 2005, we were continually running on a wing and a prayer. You know, by now it's produced 2.5 million ounces of gold. It's generated close to $500 million in free cash flow. It really comes down to a personal trust that you establish fairly early on. And I always felt that I could depend on David, and I think he felt the same. You know, he knew that there was always a high risk of failure, but we were never going to fail for lack of effort.
Friends say David will go to any lengths to support the people and projects to which he's committed. When Richard Osmond and his partner at Globetrotters Resource Group were attacked and shot on the road in Peru, David immediately offered help.
He jumped on a plane, and he was in Peru by the time we managed to get back to Lima. And he spent pretty much the next week just by our side, you know, and that's the kind of person he is.
When people talk about David, they use words like ethics, integrity, honesty, compassion, patience, hard work, dependability, all traits that have gained him respect and friendship from associates and competitors alike.
I can't imagine that there's anyone else in his line of work that has contributed more enduring benefit to the early stage exploration in our industry, while at the same time mentoring so many others.
So a champion of mineral exploration and mining development, and an early supporter of diamond discoveries in Canada and many other discoveries. If I read you the list of companies and people that David has supported and financed over the last 4 decades, we'd be here all night. He's one of Canada's preeminent resource financiers, has funded, as we heard, more than 400 companies, and mentored a generation of mining geoscientists. It's my honor to welcome David into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame.
Anthony, Pierre, thank you for your kind remarks. And Anthony, thank you and the Northern Miner for presenting my nomination to the Mining Hall of Fame. It's very much appreciated. Thank you to the Mining Hall of Fame board for giving me this great honor. And thanks to all of you for such a warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, Canadian Mining Hall of Fame executive, I can't tell you how touched and honored I am to be on the stage to be inducted into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. I would also like to offer my congratulations to the fellow inductees who are all very deserving of this recognition. To be honest, I myself never expected to be a recipient of such an honor. It's at milestones like this when you realize you're far, far closer to the end of your career than the beginning, and finding yourself doing a fair bit of reminiscing. In fact, someone asked me as I was preparing for this evening, David, is there anything you'd do differently if you had the chance? I reflected on this, and it's true that at one time I wished I had the chance to attend university and maybe study finance, geology, science, and perhaps become a geologist. But from where I stand today, frankly, I wouldn't change a thing. Today at 73, I'm as passionate about the mineral sector as I was 40 years ago. Now, luckily, life and circumstance put me on a parallel path with those geologists and engineers I so admire. A path that has allowed me to make sure they have the financial backing to get the job done, the means to explore, to discover, and ultimately to create value where none existed. The video has highlighted how easy it is, especially as a young man, to become overcome by initial success. And being that young man, I thought, gee, this is fun. Just find it, develop it, sell it to a major. What could be easier, more lucrative? What could possibly go wrong? Well, as we've seen, plenty can go wrong. You lose your money. And I guess the big lesson for me was the importance of backing solid science, backing geoscientists with strong technical skills and the passion to get the job done. People like Dr. Stuart Blouson, who was inducted in the Hall of Fame 5 years ago, and whose passion for the search rubbed off on me and stayed with me. And how could it not, after so many adventures together and so many stimulating conversations about the search for minerals? But there were other far less pleasant experiences that also helped shape me. Although I was not a shareholder, the massive Bre-X fraud, which gave our entire sector a black eye and shook investor confidence to the core. Those dark times reinforced for me, and I think for all of us, the importance of market timing, finding and partnering with the right people. Not just those who possess a depth of technical know-how, but who also have the depth of character and unimpeachable integrity as well. And along the way, I've had the privilege of investing and partnering with so many of them. Now, this is a very important part of my speech for me. It's time to highlight those who have stood by me through thick and thin. Seriously, through heartfelt thank you first and foremost to my wonderful wife, 49 years, Wendy, our children, Jessica, Patrick, and Stephanie, who are all here with us tonight, and their families back home, including 7 grandchildren. Thank you for your love and support. Thank you for inspiring me to always do better, and for sticking by me through all the times I found myself in the middle of nowhere instead of at home. Now, 2021 marks Haywood's 40th anniversary, and I'm proud to say we are still truly Canadian and 100% employee-owned. On that note, I would like to acknowledge some of my co-partners at Haywood: John Tagnetti, the chair; Rob Blanchard, president and CEO; David Lyle, vice chair; Kevin Campbell, Peter Verlis, CFO; Dana Prince, Kerry Smith, Ryan Mathieson, to name a few. To my other partners at Haywood, past and present: David Shepard, my earlier partner for 30 years; Andrew Williams, my current partner today. Thank you for your friendship, your commitment, your loyalty over the many years. And a big thank you to our outstanding team on our desk at Haywood: Nancy Gerling, has been with me 25 years; Jean Uhtred, over 20 years; Angie Kerr, and Tatiana Wimmer. They're among the more than 330 talented, hardworking employees at Haywood. And finally, please allow me to acknowledge just some of the incredible geologists and engineers I've invested alongside and partnered with over the decades that have impacted me and my career so profoundly. I feel so fortunate to have met so many of these wonderful people: Catherine McLeod-Seltzer, David Lowell, Stuart Blouson, Chuck Fipke, John McCluskey, Tom Hendrickson, Stephen Quinn, Cheka Disick, Ken Brunk, Scott McLean, Richard Osmond, Tim Moody, Dave Cole, Miles Thompson, Shastri Ramnath, Chester Miller, Clive Johnson, Peter Taggart, Manuel Montoya, Ira Thomas, Paul Johnson, Andre Goma, Bob Willis, and Brian Abraham, to name a few of them. You are the explorers, the heroes of the mineral exploration sector. Finally, I'd like to leave you with something to reflect on. Junior explorers need financial assistance and joint venture partners through up and down cycles. Whether you are an investor, a financial institution, a mid or large cap mining company, we all need to help the explorers, and there is no time like today. The world needs minerals,
and new deposits are hard to come by without discoveries by junior explorers. Once again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for this great privilege and this great honor. Good night.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the kind words. I should point out, David, though, I should let you know, on the Northern Minor, we have 3 seats on the board, myself, Deb McComb, and Rod Thomas, who are also here. I'm privileged to serve alongside them. We didn't really have a choice, David. 80 support letters for you. 80 support letters. Just really, and we read every one of them. Of course, we read all the letters, but 80 was like, we did one of these. Oh my God, we got 80 letters to read just for David. Whoa, wow. So, yes, well-earned, incredible career. Thank you for being here. That segues a little bit into how this all works, right? So the Northern Minor, I just pointed out, we have 3 seats on the board. Also part of the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame board is, of course, the PDAC, CIM, and Pierre's Mining Association of Canada. So I think to all the board members, to all those associations that we put in our time to make this happen, yeah, I mean, it's nights like this that make it all very worthwhile and feels really, really good. Also, we have our associate members, the Association for Mineral Exploration in BC, the Mining Associations of British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Ontario and Quebec. And I think we have their logos up there, so thank you to all of them. I mean, Pat is so classy. She already nailed it earlier, but I have to echo it because the work, this has been such a tough year, and what Becky Bays and Deb Breckles have done to make all this happen, they really went above and beyond. Just outstanding work. So thank you, Deb and Becky. Thank you so much. Smithcom, right? Morgan is here, and McKaylee and Joanne did so much as well. A lot of work on getting all this together. So thank you so much. All right, so now we're wrapping it up. We're getting to the drinks. I'm the only person that stands in between you and your drinks. Just a little bit of a reminder, right? That's the wrap for this year. But we're going to announce, first reminder, we're going to announce 2022's inductees. That'll come in the fall. And please, really, the secret sauce of all this, the juice that makes it happen, is all of you. Those people that you know, that you've met in your career, that are deserving. The nomination packages are a bit of work. They have to be, right? That's why it's meaningful. So get those nominations in. You can approach any of the 4 associations that I just mentioned. Again, the Northern Minor, PDAC, CAM, and Mining Association of Canada, and we will consider it for submission to the board. Everyone have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for being here. Let's have a great rest of the year. And thank you to our sponsors.
We'd like to acknowledge and thank our sustaining sponsors. Hecla, Agnico Eagle, Hatch, EY, Magris Performance Materials, Tech, Yamana Gold. It is with their support we maintain our enduring presence within the Canadian mining industry. Thank you to all our sponsors for their generous contributions and to the success of this year's Canadian Mining Hall of Fame annual dinner and induction ceremony.